This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Habayim. As we're all preparing for Rosh Hashanah, we all know that this year Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos. And on Monday we spoke about the controversy in the Holy City from Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger, who was a Talmud of Ksav Sofer, who was born in 1838. And in 1882 he wanted to reinstate the blowing of the shofar on Shabbos, as the Rosh Masechta Rosh Hashanah reports that the Rif was Toikeya on Rosh Hashanah Shechaliyos b'Shabbos, based on the Mishnah in Masechta Rosh Hashanah that says that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was masakin to blow shofar b'chol makom sheish bezdin, and there's a machlokes, is it only Yavne? And the Chachamim said echad Yavne v'echad kamakim sheish by bezdin. It seems like the opinion of the Rif is that you don't need a bezdin smuchin. So Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger gathered Ashkenazic bezdin, a Sephardic bezdin, and on Erev Rosh Hashanah they seem to have all slipped away, and it seems like he actually blew shofar b'makom mutzna. However, some element of support was given when Rav Shmuel Salant said that if he would have known that Rav Akiva Yosef Schlesinger was blowing the shofar, even though he would not have advised him to, but he would have gone to hear it behind the wall, which itself needs explanation. Either it's a valid tekiah or it's not a valid tekiah. By the way, 3 years ago, when Rosh Hashanah came out on Shabbos, we spoke at Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Rabbi Akiva Eiger's shaila is, if lamaisa you blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah that falls down on Shabbos, are you mekayim the mitzvah or you're not mekayim the mitzvah? We know there's a shaila in the Rishonim. If the rabbis say, don't do the mitzvah. For example, the rabbis say, don't say Kriya Shema while leaning, like Beis Shammai. Well, what if you do? It's machlokes Tosfos and the Ran. Rabbi Akiva Eiger wants to say that even according to those shittos, that when you don't listen to the chachamim and the performance of the mitzvah, you're not yotzei. By tkiyah shofar, you would be yotzei. So Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger would be going according to this shita of Rabbi Akiva Eiger, that if you do it, you would be yotzei. And Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger offered 13 arguments why we should be able to blow shofar. He brought a raya from the fact that Sar Bali Chaim Da'iraisa pushes off Isser Kli Mehechanai. He brought a raya from the fact we free an Eved Kanani to make a minyan, even though the Isser is an Isser Da'iraisa and the Mitzvah is only a D'Rabbanan. And many Rishonim hold like the Rif that you don't need a Bezdin Smuchim. Plus the Chachamim are very hesitant to be Mavato Mitzvah Da'iraisa. And the Chachamim basically responded to Rav Akiva Yosef Schlesinger, and as recorded by Rabbi Chil Michal Tikachinsky in his Sefer Ir HaKodesh v'Hamikdash, the main dismissal of his argument is, even if you find cases where perhaps a mitzvah da'iraisa would trump an Isser D'Rabbanan, but we do not, there's a general rule that I'efshar l'damois D'Rabbanan l'D'Rabbanan. So, for example, he says, Tshuva klolis achas yeshna li'ikar tanasa. There's one main answer to Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger, and that is B'chlal i'efshar l'damois gezeras chachamim zelazeh. You cannot compare rabbinic decrees one to the other, and you can't judge from one case to another. Fine, but let's get into some of the specific details of why his arguments did not stand halacha l'maisa. Rabbi Chil Michal speaks about very respectfully and very cordially about these arguments. He doesn't attack them with venom, but he does deal with them in a systematic way, one by one. Number one, that he says, just because the Gemara says that if Tsar Balei Chayim was the Iraisa, you could be Mevatel the Isser D'Rabbanan of Mevatel Klei Mehechanai, says Rabbi Chil Michal Tikachinsky, Tsar Balei Chayim is not a mitzvah, it's an Isser. In Isser, the Iraisa would have been able to push off an Isser D'Rabbanan of Mevato Klei Mehechanai. Ma'ashein Kein Tkiyah Shofar is a mitzvah. So just because Tsar Balei Chayim could have pushed off a D'Rabbanan, that's an Isser D'Oraisa pushing off an Isser D'Rabbanan. But we don't necessarily find a mitzvah D'Oraisa could push off a Isser D'Rabbanan. Elamai, you're allowed to free an Eved to make a minyan, so you see that you're allowed to violate a D'Oraisa to be Mekayim, a mitzvah D'Rabbanan even of a Rabbim. So certainly you should be able to be Mevatel a D'Rabbanan to be Mekayim a mitzvah D'Oraisa of the Rabbim. To that Rabbi Glatstein says that when you're freeing an Eved, La'olam Bahem Ta'avoidu is not a real Isser. It's not a real Isser. It's only a Din D'Rabbanan. And the pasuk is an asmachta ba'alma. I would humbly add the well-known shita of the Ran, that the Ran says that La'olam Bahem Ta'avoidu is patterned after Loi Sechanim. You know why you can't free an Eved Kanani? Because you don't give Gentiles free gifts. But in a situation where you're doing it for yourself, you're freeing the Eved for yourself because you want a minyan, so then you're not violating Lo Olam B'hem Ta'avodu. It's not Lo Yisachanim. So you don't have a raya that a mitzvah d'Rabbanan is pushing off in Esser D'Oraisa. Okay. Weiter. Furthermore, the Ran himself, who Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger said, maintained that it's very difficult for the Chachamim to push off an Isser D'Oraisa completely. The problem is that Ran doesn't even agree to the Rif that you could blow shofar b'zman hazeh. So it's hard to utilize the svara of the Ran that the Chachamim are very hesitant to push off a D'Oraisa. Plus, Rabbi Glatstein points out that the fact that we don't blow shofar on Shabbos, that's not called being oiker a mitzvah legamri. You'll blow it next week. I'm sorry, you blow it next year. They're not permanently being mevatel D'Oraisa. They're only mevatel the D'Oraisa in the rare instance where Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos. I would also add, there's a very beautiful tshuva from the Tzitz Eliezer, that this is not called like what the Taz Hayadua says, that you can't be mevatel, where the Torah explicitly says to do something, the Rabbanan can't be mevatel it, because you have to understand, we're not being mevatel Tkiyah Shofar this year. So really? Yeah, we're blowing shofar this year. We're not, when? On the second day. No, but that's not the first day. Yeah, but it's Yom HaArichta. So it's not called completely being mevatel the shofar. You see, if, let's say the Chachamim would say, don't do Milah on Shabbos, so then you wouldn't be doing the Milah on Shabbos. But over here, the rabbis are not saying don't blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah. They're saying don't blow shofar the first half of Rosh Hashanah. But you're blowing it on the day of Rosh Hashanah, which is one long day. By the way, I'll just throw in, there's an amazing Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, who says, why is Rosh Hashanah Yom HaArichta? I really have to give a share on this one day. Because, what happened on the first Rosh Hashanah? On the first Rosh Hashanah, Adam HaRishon was created on Friday. But that night, the sun didn't set. So it was like a long day together with the Shabbos. So the idea of Yom HaArichta is sort of a commemoration of that first day of creation of Adam HaRishon in Gan Eden. Okay, let's progress a little bit. Furthermore, Rabbi Yechiel Mechot Tugachinsky says that Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger wanted to say, well, nowadays there's no real Rishus Harabim, so therefore the Gzeira is not really in effect. He says that's not a compelling argument at all. Question: let's say at the time when the Chachamim made a Gzeira, you're not to blow shofar. What if you're in a castle, so you're in Rishus Hayachid? Are you allowed to blow shofar there on Shabbos? There's no Gzeira you're going to come to carry. The answer is, of course you're not allowed to. Once the Chachamim were goizer in Rishus HaRabim, then the Gezerah applies anywhere, even in Rishus HaYachid, lest you come to a Rishus HaRabim. So, even if Bizman Hazeh there's no Rishus HaRabim, since the Gezerah was made at a time that there was a Rishus HaRabim, that Gezerah stands and remains forever and ever. It exists everywhere, even where there's a Shus, even where in a Rishus HaYachid, and even in all times when maybe there'll be an era where there's no Rishus HaRabim. And that which Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger said, let's appoint guards to make sure nobody carries. Let's cement the shofar into the wall. None of this helps. Nasata dvarecha l'shiurim. Once the Chachamim make a gzeira, the gezerah stands. We're not going to start differentiating between specific circumstances and various circumstances. You can't do that. And therefore, the bottom line is that Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger's attempt to blow the shofar in Yerushalayim was not successful. And finally, Rabbi Akiva Yosef says, well, I have a great idea. It's true. Blowing the shofar, it's an Isser D'Rabbanan. And whoever is blowing it can't really do it. But he should make the following equation. What's more worthwhile? Nobody should hear the shofar, or for him to violate their D'Rabbanan so everyone else could blow the shofar? So isn't it cost effective? Isn't that a wise decision? Let him violate the D'Rabbanan and everyone else will hear the shofar. So, says Rabbi Michal Tukachinsky, with all due respect, if that's the case, then Rabba's takana is down the drain. Rabba's takana is no one's allowed to blow shofar. Shema Yavireno. But what do you mean? You could just have one guy take it on the chin for everybody else, and we'll ask him. But Rabba said, no one's allowed to do it. What do you mean? No, I'll do it. Rabba said you're not allowed to do it. Rabba's talking to you. And if Rabba said no one's allowed to do it, that means Rabba was saying no one's allowed to do it, and we're not allowed to ask somebody to do it. Part of the gezerah that you're not allowed to blow shofars, you can't blow shofar, you can't ask someone else not to blow shofar. Now, I want to tell you something. I've been thinking about this the last couple of days. There are a lot of Amaram, and there are a lot of Tanoim. And nobody made the gezerah until, nobody's taking responsibility for this gezerah, just Rabba. It's called gezerah de Rabba. There are a few things we know about Rabba. Rabba had a good sense of humor. Rabba was the one who began every share with a joke. Now, I don't think this is part of his, I think it's just the opposite. The Gemara also says they didn't like Rabba. Sunny le kule pumpadisa. They didn't like him. Now you could imagine, this was not a popular gezerah. I can guarantee you, when Rabba got up and he said, I don't want anyone blowing the shofar on Shabbos, I don't want anyone taking the lulav on Shabbos, I don't want anyone reading the Megillah, boo! You know, I don't know, they probably ran out of tomatoes very quickly. I don't think this was very popular. You know, and I always said that's why Rabba had to, lighten things up a bit, because this is a tough gezerah. Can you imagine? We have a court case. We hired a defense attorney. His name is Mr. Ram. We cut off his horn and we blow it. That's our defense. Rabba said, no, you can't use a defense attorney on Shabbos. So how are we supposed to win the case? You can imagine this did not go over well. If Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger thought of 13 reasons why you could do it anyway, I'm sure in the times of Rabba, they thought of 130 reasons why it's not a good gezerah. But it is a good gezerah. And it's the greatest Mesiras Nefesh and Akedah. You see, what's the purpose? I think Rabbi Aaron says, I have to look, I'm going to talk about it tonight. What's the purpose of the shofar? To remind of the Akedah. What's the Akedah? Self-sacrifice. Is there a greater Akedah and sacrifice than to give up our defense attorney because we're concerned lest we violate carrying on Shabbos? That's our Akedas Yitzchak. But you can imagine Rabba's gezerah didn't go over well. But Rabba's correct. The Baal HaTurim brings a raya to Rabba. The Baal HaTurim says, even though it's a different Rabba, the Baal HaTurim says when the pasuk says Ki Rabba Hi, it's a reference to one of the decrees of Rabba. So we see that his eminence is merumaz, at least in the psukim in the Megillah. But the bottom line is, Rabbi Akiva Yosef Schlesinger was not successful in making this an enduring practice, and the Rif may have done it, but his Talmidim did not follow after him, like the Rosh writes in number 10, Perek Daled, Ois Aleph, V'lo noagu Talmidav acharav la'asos kein. And despite the fact that we visited the Rif very recently, it's not going to be enough to blow the shofar. This year, Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos. Reb Levi Yitzchak of Arditchev says like this: Yom Tov shel Rosh Hashanah shechal lios b'Shabbos. What do you mean Yom Tov shel Rosh Hashanah? Everybody knows Rosh Hashanah is Yom Tov. Just say Rosh Hashanah shechal lios b'Shabbos. You don't blow the shofar. Why does it have to say Yom Tov shel Rosh Hashanah shechal lios b'Shabbos? Says Reb Levi Yitzchak. Yom Tov. You know what a good day is? A good day is Rosh Hashanah that comes out on Shabbos. You know why it's a good day? Because here's the thing, God's not allowed to write on Shabbos. Same way we're not allowed to write on Shabbos, God's not allowed to write on Shabbos. So the thing is, even if somebody deserves a Shnas Misa, God can't write it because He can't desecrate the Shabbos. So you say, then how could He give us life? Pikuach nefesh is doicha Shabbos. He could write us for life. Says Reb Levi Yitzchak, Yom Tov. You know what a good day is? Rosh Hashanah shechal lios b'Shabbos. Because God is bound to give us only life in such a year. So Taka, we should all be zoicha. Shishnas Chaim v'shom. Tonight at 8:30 we're going to speak about the machshava, philosophy, thought behind hashkafa of Rosh Hashanah shechal lios b'Shabbos. This was more of a halachic topic, and we're going to talk about it more al pi hashkafa this evening, 8:30. Please join us. Have a wonderful day. Bracha v'hatzlacha. Kol tov. Good year. Thank you. You too. I'm sorry, what?
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.